I'd like to go into a special presentation that we have tonight from Mr. Bob Lee. And we have a resolution, and I'll present that to him, I think, after your presentation, Bob. Does that make sense?
I hope I'm worthy of it.
Yes, well, you certainly will be, and I will let you, I don't know if in your presentation you'll explain what you've been doing. I'm imagining you will, but...
I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you, President Arch, and thank you to the board for the invitation to be here. A lot of people think a ride for 3 reasons is about a bike ride, but it's really about Barrington and our community and the collaboration of media, of businesses, of multi-generations of our residents. That's what this is really about. And a good example of that was this weekend, a little girl went into Phillips Menswear to buy a couple shirts, one for her father and one for her grandfather. And Peter Yankala, the owner, said to her, "Why are you buying the shirts?" And she said, "Well, they're Christmas gifts, but I know the profit goes to a ride for 3 reasons. And he said, "Well, that's very philanthropic of you." And she said, No, the money goes to cancer, ALS, and hospice." So that's what I love to see. This is the community coming together at all ages. So it's been a joy to be on this ride, be on this journey. I appreciate the welcome home that you gave me. And it's great to be able to call Barrington my home. You know, it's a pleasure. We've been here for 33 years, my wife, Ann, and I, and we've raised both of our children here, and we love it. So thank you for making it the community that we have. Yes, just a little synopsis of the last ride. I've done 3 cross-country rides. The last one I just went from Vancouver to Mexico. It was 2,000 miles. I left on September 5th. I was gone for 54 days. I rode for 44 days. It was wonderful weather. I went for 5.5 weeks before I had the first raindrop. So that was great. People would ask, how did my body hold up? I'm very happy to say the body held up very well. The seat held up. At times it gets a little numb about noon, but I'm happy that there were no incidences, and really the great thing was to have a lot of guest riders out with me. One of the statistics that I shared before I went out was I had ridden 10,000 miles and I never ran into a bad person. And now I've ridden 12,000 miles around the perimeter of the country. And the best thing I can say is that I have not run into a bad person. All I have run into is good people. And that's a message for all of us to look for the good people that are out there, and they are all over. And the random acts of kindness, I wish I could share with everyone how good people are when an old man's on a bicycle. But it was truly a pleasure to be out there and to be able to say, I've never met a bad person on a bike. So thank you. One of the things that, just to share a little bit, to encourage all of you to get on your bike and head to the West Coast sometime, pick the time of the year, I think is important. But I just want to share a little bit of the beauty going down the West Coast. And it's great to go north to south, so you're right on the edge of the water looking down. But this is going through Washington and Oregon and the Rocky Coast and the sculptures that are out there in the ocean. It's just magnificent. And so to me, there's no better way to see the country than on a bicycle seat. And then you go into Northern California through the redwood forest and ride through the forest and just look at the beauty that is out here and that people have preserved in state parks and national parks for us to enjoy. And then as you get through the forest, you're back along the water, and at times you stop to see what you hear. And if you're in a car with a windshield, sometimes you wouldn't hear the dogs barking, and they weren't dogs. They go, and they were seals and sea lions out there, and sometimes I couldn't see them, but you could hear them as you rode down the sea. If you keep riding, again, you get close to the seals, and you see them on the beaches and enjoy watching their frolicking around, but you get very close. So again, There's 1,500 pictures on the website, so you can go on the website, 3reasons.org. I love photography, sharing. Then you get into the heartland of our agriculture. And you really need to be there to experience the fields and the productivity of machinery and man and technology coming together to give us the food that we have on our table. But you look at these fields of Brussels sprouts and lettuce and cabbage and broccoli, and the people are so proud. Look at the gal up here holding her Brussels sprouts to show them for the pictures. But it's nice to meet these people and to realize that they're out there 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, harvesting our food for us. So I got out into the strawberry fields, and before I left, they're presenting me with a box of strawberries to take on my bike to enjoy at the bed and breakfast that I was staying at that night. And then you continue down the coast, and the terrain gets a little more mellow, and the beaches get a little bit wider, and the population gets a little denser, but it's all beautiful going down the coast. And this is riding a gravel road to Freedom Park, right by the border. And this is what you find when you get to the border of Mexico, right where Mexico and the United States meet at the Pacific Ocean. That fence goes right out into the Pacific Ocean. So you can see that one of the patrol cars on the other side of the fence. But it was great to get there. A lot of people talk about the ride as it was inspiring. And really what is inspiring were the people that made this ride so successful. And it's people that came out and joined on the ride. And this was the first three. I had 9 different riders. This was unique on this ride. The other ones I did completely solo. But these rides, I had 9 different riders. 8 of them were involved with Barrington. The first threesome was Steve Block and Beth Rosman, our trustee, and Kim Dutchy-Swan. They came out for 5 days through Oregon and into the redwood forest, and we had a ball. I think, Beth, you agree? She's not sore any longer and feeling good. But, they did a fabulous job riding. Steve is an excellent cyclist. So Kim was representing the village in my book. She was representing hospice. Kim was representing cancer. She was representing donors and philanthropy by being there. Steve Block was representing all the people behind the scenes that made this possible. And Steve knew more about my route. He had every left and right turn on a little Garmin for me. I would call up at times. I'd pull off of my route to find a place to stay and not quite sure how to get back on route. I'd call Steve. Steve, where am I? And how do I get back on route? And he knew, because of a GPS I had with me, he knew exactly where I was and how fast I was traveling. So it was nice to have Steve with me. But you can see the beauty that we enjoyed, the 4 of us, riding down the coast. It's just a spectacular way to go sightseeing, and then to come through the redwood forest with them. And in certain cases, you need to get off of your bike seat and go for a walk. And we went for a couple wonderful walks through the redwood forest. But it's just magnificent to see these trees and how they are being preserved in some of our parks. This was my son, our son, Scott. He lives in Denver, but he grew up here. He went to school here. And that's the connection with people that have moved away that are still supportive of a Ride for 3 Reasons. And Scott and many of his generation, there's a couple of pace setters that are big donors that have moved away, but their heart is still here in Barrington. So Scott came out and helped me up over some of the highest peaks that I climbed, and it was nice to have him pulling me along and encouraging me. This was another rider from Barrington. Neil Campbell is Chief Marketing Officer for CDW. They were a sponsor. He was representing the corporate sponsors like Hunter Douglas and Walgreens and CDW by being on the ride. Neil is a bundle of energy. He arrived at 2:30 in the morning. When they shipped his bike, they took the whole thing apart. By 7:30, he had his bike back together, and we were off riding. But it was great to have Neil. Peter Yankala, many of you know him from Phillips Menswear. Peter came out and rode 100 miles north of San Francisco all the way down to the Golden Gate Bridge, and we crossed the bridge together. So it was great to have Peter there. And Peter was representing, in my mind, the businesses of Barrington. And again, this has been a collaborative effort. While I was gone, I had nothing to do with it. There was Shop for the Ride. 29 businesses came together and said, how can we make a difference and help raise money? So the business community has been super here, and I hope we all support them over the holiday season through our shopping habits and shop here. Wickstrom Ford contacted me and said, how can we help? And this is a billboard. And when you see this Jeep or you see this logo, I hope you don't think about a ride. I hope you think about the community, that it's Barrington that made this possible. It's not Bob. It is that collaborative effort. This could have been a lonely bike ride, and it wasn't. It was a community effort. This was our grandson. He's a sophomore at Barrington High School. He came out for a few days and rode from Santa Barbara to LA. He represents the kids that got so involved. They put on activities, they had dances. There were over 500-600 kids that have been involved with a Ride for 3 Reasons. Probably close to 100 of them were volunteers. So that's what I love to see, is his age and below getting involved and helping in a charity. And as you can see, lots of kids did get involved. He had some good fun as we went through Santa Monica and was having a ball. We went to college searching a little bit. We went to Pepperdine, and Pepperdine, if you've ever been there, is up on a real steep hill. And so we finally got up. It's about a 12% grade, and he questioned whether we should be going up. And I said, you can walk. He said, I'm not walking. So we rode up to the top of the hill, and he decided he didn't want to go to Pepperdine. But it was great to have him. He turned the bike over to his mother, Laura Horak, who came and finished the ride from LA to Santa Barbara. And she's engaged the 40-something, 30-something, 50-something generations and brought them together, a very, very talented group. And again, everyone has been a volunteer. There's no paid staff. To have something like this, I think, can only happen in Barrington. I don't think there's many communities that would have people come together like we have come together in so many different ways. So to have her hit the border with me and enjoy that was wonderful. How are we doing on fundraising? The goal for a Ride for 3 Reasons was to raise $1 million. A third would go to each of the charities, cancer, ALS, and hospice. There are no fundraising expenses. That's all being taken care of privately. So these are the 3 charities. The money is being directed directly to cancer research or ALS research. It's restricted funds. And the key on this ride, and when I ride down the West Coast and tell people there is a matching fund, a $605,000 by 25 people, they can't believe it. And again, that is because we live in Barrington and we have pillars in Barrington that are so generous with their gifts. And so we have a fund of $605,000. And that has been very impactful. This young couple, the Andersons, I met them in Whidbey Island. I was staying with Susie and Nate Palmer, who used to live in Barrington. They were getting married a month after I met them. And they asked their guests, please no gifts. If you would like to do something, write a check, and we're going to give the money to a charity. And we had dinner that night, and I thought they had already decided where that money was going. And the next morning, they send me an email and say they had selected a Ride for 3 Reasons because their money could get tripled. And a month later, I receive a check for $1,700 from this young couple. And as you can see, he's in full uniform, but he's wearing a Ride for 3 Reasons bracelet on his honeymoon or on his wedding day. So it's meeting people like that. This was a neighbor, Grayson, who came over about 2 weeks ago with an envelope. And he had been saving his money to go to Disneyland. $1.42 is what he had saved up. But he put it in an envelope and came and gave it to Ride for 3 Reasons. You know, here is a child giving everything that he has. Here are kids that are 7 years old and 8 years old that had their birthday party and said no gifts and gave checks of $800 that gets tripled. So here's a 7 and 8 year olds that were raising $2,400. How cool is this? And one last story. This is an emotional one. I wore this heart in 2007 when I did 6,500 miles. It was given to me of a widow of someone with ALS who I got to know after the first ride, or during the first ride. And when Rich Crane passed away, Lisa had this locket made that contained some of Rich's ashes in it. And I spoke at Rich's funeral. There were 650 people in Arlington Heights at his funeral, and I referred to him as my attitude coach. And Lisa came over before the ride in 2007 and said, I know your attitude coach would want to be with you. And she gave me Rich back for this ride, and so he rode the entire ride. And a couple weeks ago, we had a get-together, a spin-a-thon. And Lisa and her 2 children came, and her new husband came to the spin-a-thon. And I presented Rich back to Lisa. Very emotional for all of us, because Rich got me up some hills. There were times that he'd be hanging out, and he's always ahead of me if I'm on my bike. And so I knew he could lead the way. But there were a few days I said, hey, Rich, why don't you get off my neck and get behind him, push. But Rich was with me, and that is why I ride. That is why people have gotten involved, because we're helping people that can't help themselves. The end of this story, I gave Rich back. And before Lisa left, she and her family came up, all emotional. They had just sold the house the week before that she and Rich owned and the kids grew up in. And she said, we want to give $10,000 of the proceeds of that house to Ride for 3 Reasons. So we have little kids giving everything they have. We have people that have lost people giving big chunks. We have pace setters that have set up a fund to encourage all of us to give. So I can't be happier with the involvement of so many people. Here is where we are. We've raised so far $725,000. There's still $122,000 in a pace setter fund. That's that matching fund. And my commitment to them is that we'll raise 50% more than they put in the fund. And so here's 25 people that put in money, and we have to raise half of what they put in to earn that money. And right now there's still $122,000 that has not been earned. So we have to raise another $61,000, which I hope we can do before December 15th. If not, I need to go back to the pace setters and said we couldn't make this happen. You know, if you think riding a bike 2,000 miles is tough, it's going to be much tougher for me to go back to these pace setters and say, would you like some of your money back? So I hope we don't need to do that. I hope we can all give. We have school teachers, a retired school teacher. I've received 7 checks from her every month. She gives what she can. So it's been great. So people can give if they still would like to on the website, 3reasons.org. And we hope we will achieve our goal. That is certainly what we're striving for. But if we don't, we know that the community has been behind this. We know that there's been a collaboration of all levels. And for that, we're deeply, deeply grateful. And thank you for the opportunity to thank the community. Again, this could not happen in just any town, but it can happen in Barrington, and it's been a pleasure being a part of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. And on behalf of our village, the village board passed a resolution recognizing, honoring, and thanking you for your successful ride for 3 reasons. And it reiterates a lot of the milestones that you've accomplished in that, and we'd like to present you with a copy of that with our thanks. And also, because we always want you to be able to find your way home, you are getting our first new key to the city of Barrington, with our great thanks. Yes. So
You
you
changed
must-
a lot.
Changed a lot. We just changed a lot.
Key to your heart. Thank you.
Our
Thank you.
heart, but no, I mean, this is-
Thank you. That is,
present
that's
that to you.
beautiful. Thank you.
So much.
Appreciate it.
So
Thank you for
appreciate
the opportunity.
Thank you.